Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Choose Strong podcast. I'm your host, Sally McRae, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you have joined me for this very first episode. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and we're doing it. We're making it happen. I told myself over and over again, I don't have the bandwidth. It's too complicated. I'm not going to do it. And this is many conversations with friends over the years. This is very supportive, encouraging followers saying, hey, when are you going to start a podcast? Have you ever thought about doing that? Well, I'm finally taking the pledge, but I couldn't do it without the wonderful help of my husband, Eddie. He figured out all the audio, got all the equipment. So I'm very grateful for him. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to do this. So what I'm going to do today, because it's just me today, this is an intro episode. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what to expect, some topics that I have coming up, some interviews, all that good stuff. I'm keeping it short and sweet today. But I basically started this podcast because I love communicating. I'm actually a communication studies major. I love to write. I love to speak. I love deep discussions and interviewing. You know, for years, this has been something that just has brought me a lot of joy. I started actually appearing as a guest on podcasts back in 2012. Trail Runner Nation, Scott and Don, man, they were so gracious to me, brought me on that show, and over the years have continued to bring me on as a guest. And over the course of the past decade, I have been able to appear on several podcasts and give interviews and have really good discussions. And it's just something I've always really loved. So starting my own, obviously there's a lot of cool things about starting your own podcast because you can talk about all the things that you want to talk about. You can steer the conversation, and create it in your own special way. So I am excited to have some new discussions and new topics, and also bring on some fun people to interview. So my goals so far for this podcast, one, are to connect and to encourage. I love connecting with people. I love encouraging people. And so we're definitely going to do that on this podcast. I'd love to inform and share. So for those of you that are runners, whether on the road, in the mountains, on the track, I will be talking about running, but I'm also going to be talking about motherhood, business, and real life situations. I'm a storyteller at heart, so I do love to share about my personal stories, but I like to keep things real and raw and in a way that we can connect with each other. Definitely going to be bringing on some friends and just people from all walks of life onto the show, so you can expect interviews. And then in 2022, we are hoping to turn this into a show on YouTube where you can watch it if you like. So stay tuned for that. But what I will be doing as far as upcoming topics, I do have a series on the body. Now, if you've followed me for any stretch of time on social media, you know this is something that I like to talk about, but in a very specific way. And so the conversations right now that are surrounding body issues, body image, filters, and different things on social media, comparing, contrasting. Okay, I don't always agree with all of those things. And so I'm going to bring up some really good discussions. I would love to challenge that whole area. But one of the things that I want to do too is really focus on what we are doing with our body, because I think that's the most powerful angle when talking about the body, talking about just what we're doing with it and how that we can apply that to our lives, and also how we can communicate that to others. So be on the lookout for that. That will be a 3-part series. I'm also going to be talking about mindset and whether that applies to your goals, just your personal self, life challenges, your mindset in training and racing, your mindset as it pertains to critics, and even you as your own critic. That will also be a series. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. And then, of course, I have some really fun interviews lined up with friends. I have a fun feature, though, with my kids and then also with my husband. So I'm really excited to share those, give you guys a little bit of insight into our family, kind of how we operate, and I guess what it's like for my kids to grow up with me. This has been a common question that people have had, and so my kids are old enough now, so we'll bring them on the show and we'll do a little Q&A with them. So that will be really fun. And then I'm going to throw a question at you too. Since this is an intro episode, I would love for you to contact me. You can contact me via my website, which is SallyMcRae.com. I would love to hear from you on what you would like to hear on the show. So what are some topics that you would like me to discuss? Maybe even some people that you would like me to bring on. You can hit me up on Twitter too, or you can get me on, Instagram direct message. Sometimes that gets a little flooded, but there is in my bio a contact button there, so you can hit that. Or like I said, you can hit me up just via my website. I definitely see the contact forms that come through on my website. So I would love to hear from you. But since this is just an intro to my podcast, I do want to keep this short, but I am going to end with a word of encouragement. And in fact, this has very much to do with a recent writing of mine that I posted online. As you know, I do like to post some of my writing. Some of the stuff is straight from my book that I'm working on. I do like to share it and post it online. This one I posted just a couple days ago, and it's about, just courage, being courageous. And it's a picture that my good friend Sarah took of me during Badwater this past summer. And the quote that I chose, "You'll never know unless you go. Be courageous." So I'm going to read this to you. If you haven't seen it, that's totally cool. But I'm going to read it because I'm basically talking directly to you. So this is for you, my friend. You are not alone in your fear. You're not the only one who doubts. And you don't need to be superhuman to do all those things you dream in your mind. But you do need to go. The only difference between those who achieve their goals and those who don't is the willingness to go. They go despite the uncertainty. They go when they don't feel 100%. They go despite their critics. They go despite the chance of failing. They go when they're weak. They go when they've lost everything. They go because they understand that even in their failures, it means they were trying. They go even if it takes decades to finally make it, because they know that it's worth it. You are worth it. So go, my dear friend. You will never know unless you go. Be courageous. Now you can apply that to running. Most people know me as a professional athlete, professional runner. And so a lot of times they think that I am only talking about running when I do my posts. But the parallel that I'm always trying to make when talking about running, there's a parallel to life. And so, yes, this is a word of encouragement to you. If you're gearing up for a race this weekend, or if you're wondering whether or not to sign up for that race or to do that challenging adventure. But I'm also talking about just life in general. How often are you questioning yourself? How often do you question not only your self-worth, your ability, or the possibility of accomplishing something? I'll tell you what, and I know this from just personal experience, I have wasted a lot of time in my life just wondering, going back and forth, or just assuming it's not going to work out, it's not worth it. But sometimes the reason that I don't go is because I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of how I would look in front of others. I don't want that feeling. I want to know the outcome. But I'll tell you what, I would never accomplish anything in life if I always stuck to that pattern of thinking. See, the better way to approach decisions is to be okay with the fact that you might not get the outcome that you hope for. Because sometimes the outcome that you hope for in the moment that you want it isn't necessarily what you need. And and I've talked about this on podcasts in the past. When I first did Badwater in 2018, I was incredibly fit, very confident. I knew what I could do on that course, or so I told myself. And it ended up being a very terrible race day. Yes, I crossed the finish line, but it was nothing how I had hoped it to be. And when I looked back at my training, I thought, wow, I should have performed much better than this. But what I learned from that race was everything that I needed. And the lessons that I learned, it wasn't even so much just as an athlete or how to train or how to race. I definitely needed to be humbled in some ways, but it also taught me a lot just about life. Just because you do everything right doesn't mean that you deserve to have the outcome that you want. And I think it's even more true in life and more often that we see that happen. And the adventure in life, the fulfillment that we find in life is in the journey. It isn't always in reaching that goal. It's the steps that you take every day. It's the lessons that you learn from your failure. It's this chipping away and the sanding down and becoming the best version of you. And guess what? Only you can do that. And it's the same thing with what I'm talking about here in this post, this idea of you just need to go. You have to be okay with the chance of failing. You have to be okay with it not working out, knowing that whatever comes from that, even in those tough, challenging situations, even when you feel let down, even in your failure, you can grow from that. You can learn from that. You can become better. And guess what? There's still a lot of road left to go. If you got up this morning and you are breathing, there is a purpose for you and your life. So keep going. I'm going to sign off with that. I'm going to wish you all the best. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I look forward to tuning in again. I'm your host, Sally McRae, and I'll see you next time.